Hi there, hope you are doing fine. This is Mr. Philip Kauma, the excellent biology tutor. We're looking at transport in animals, and this is the second tutorial video. And this tutorial video, we're looking at blood vessels. Without wasting much of your time, let us begin. Alright, so the objectives are arteries, veins, and capillaries. At the end of this tutorial video, you're going to learn something about these blood vessels. So let's start by defining what blood vessels are. So what are blood vessels? These are tubes through which blood moves around the body. Simple definition. They're just tubes. Blood vessels are just tubes through which blood moves around the body. Now, there are three types of blood vessels. These are arteries, veins, and capillaries. These are the three types of blood vessels: arteries, veins, and capillaries. Okay, so now let's start by looking at arteries. So what are arteries? What are they? These are blood vessels that carry blood away from the heart to other parts of the body. That's what they do. Arteries simply transport blood away from the heart. They transport blood away from the heart. Now, if you look at the diagram of the heart, you're going to see that there are two blood vessels that are transporting blood away from the heart. And these blood vessels are the pulmonary artery and the aorta. They both transport blood away from the heart. The pulmonary artery transports blood away from the heart, taking it to the lungs, while the aorta transports blood away from the heart, taking it to all parts of the body. Now, when we say all parts of the body, we mean your hands, your legs, your toes, all those parts, your brain, your nose, all those parts, they receive blood. And the blood vessel that transports blood from the heart, taking it to all parts of the body, is the aorta. Now, let's look at the characteristics of these arteries after mentioning the two types of arteries, which is the pulmonary artery and the aorta. So, characteristics. Number one, they carry blood away from the heart. That's what they do. Arteries simply transport blood away from the heart. That's what they do. They carry blood away from the heart. I repeat, arteries carry blood away from the heart. And the other one is that they carry blood at high pressure. Arteries carry blood at high pressure. So the blood that is flowing in arteries, in these tubes, it is under high pressure. Okay, and the pressure is coming from the heart. So arteries carry blood at high pressure. And then arteries, they have thick walls and narrow lumens. They have thick walls and narrow lumens. The thick walls help them withstand the pressure from the heart. Now you may be asking, nanga lumen vagambapo ndef chan lumen die chan. So let me try to draw a simple diagram. So this is a blood vessel. Okay, this is a blood vessel, which is an artery. Okay, so this is a blood vessel in 3D. So lumen, it is a passage between pakati hapa. This kaho that I'm doing, this kambo, this is what we call lumen, and these are the walls of the arteries. So we are saying that arteries have got what? Thick walls and narrow lumen. So this is the lumen arc. This is the lumen. So the thick walls, the thickness helps these blood vessels to withstand the pressure which is coming from the heart. Otherwise, that's the simple diagram of an artery. Let's look at the other characteristic. They have no valves, since the pressure from the heart is enough to keep blood moving in one direction. So for the arteries, they do not have valves, because that pressure which is coming from the heart, it is enough to ensure that blood is flowing in one direction. The pressure is enough to ensure that blood is flowing in one direction. So they have no valves. Arteries have no valves. They all carry oxygenated blood except the pulmonary artery. So the pulmonary artery simply transports blood from the heart, taking it to the lungs so that blood can be oxygenated. So as blood is flowing from the heart going to the lungs, it is deoxygenated. And the blood vessel which transports that deoxygenated blood from the heart to the lungs is the pulmonary artery. So all arteries carry oxygenated blood except the pulmonary artery. They appear round in cross section like the diagram I drew. So they appear round in a cross section. They are located deeper under the skin than veins. So for the arteries, they are deeper. So I made my own upper surface. These are not arteries. Okay. Why? Because for the arteries, they are deeper under the skin than veins. Alright, now let's look at veins. Veins. So veins, these are blood vessels that carry blood towards the heart. So they are the ones that bring blood to the heart. So these are blood vessels that carry blood towards the heart from other parts of the body. So my veins here, vyama blood kumutima. That's what they do. They carry blood towards the heart from other parts of the body. They have the following characteristics. They carry blood towards the heart. Okay, now if you look at the heart again, there are two blood vessels that bring blood to the heart, and these are the vena cava and the pulmonary vein. These are the blood vessels that bring blood to the heart, vena cava and the pulmonary vein. So veins transport blood from all parts of the body, from other parts of the body, bringing it to the heart. The other characteristic is that they carry blood at low pressure. They transport blood at low pressure. If you look at arteries, for them they transport blood at high pressure, but for veins they carry blood, or they transport blood at low pressure. They have thin walls and wide lumens. So again, let me draw so that you can have a picture of what they are saying. So in this case, the veins, they've got thin walls and wide lumens. They've got thin walls and wide lumens. So this is what they are talking about. You've seen this hole on the middle, each end drawing up. So this is the lumen. It is in this passage where blood flows. So the walls are thin, okay, and the lumen is what? Wide. So for the veins, they have thin walls and wide lumen. Thin walls and wide lumens. They have valves to keep blood moving in one direction by preventing backflow. The function of valves is simply to prevent the backflow of blood. So when you look at veins, they have valves because already veins are carrying blood at low pressure. So we need valves to ensure that blood is flowing in one direction, because the function of valves is to prevent the backflow of blood. So veins have valves to keep blood moving in one direction by preventing backflow. They all carry deoxygenated blood except the pulmonary vein. So all veins, they carry deoxygenated blood except the pulmonary vein. The pulmonary vein, it is a blood vessel which transports oxygenated blood from the lungs, taking it to the heart. So all veins, like the vena cava, transports deoxygenated blood from all parts of the body to the heart. All veins transport deoxygenated blood except the pulmonary vein, which transports oxygenated blood from the lungs to the heart. They appear irregular in a cross section. So I'm going to look at some diagrams of these two blood vessels. And the last one is they are located nearer to the skin surface than arteries. For the veins, they are located nearer to the surface of the skin than arteries. So ndiye ametimaona ya veins. Alright, hope we are following. Let's look at the diagrams of these two structures. So we have the structure of an artery, the structure of a vein. So as you can see, the walls are thick for the artery, and the lumen, see the lumen is narrow compared to this. The lumen is wide here and the walls are thin. So we've got the fibrous layer, we've got the muscular layer. Okay, you know these muscles? Do you know these muscles? If you know these muscles, comment if you know these muscles. We did locomotion, so I hope you know these muscles. And then we've got the endothelium, which is another layer. And then we've got, as you can see in veins, we've got valves. You see, these are valves. Alright, capillaries. These are the smallest blood vessels. They are the smallest blood vessels, ladies and gentlemen. They are the smallest blood vessels. They form a link between arteries and veins. they form a link between arteries and veins. As arteries approach the organs of the body, they branch into smaller arteries called arterioles. The arterioles keep on subdividing until they form capillaries. The capillaries have direct contact with the tissue cells. This makes it possible for substances to be exchanged between the blood and tissue cells. In addition, the walls of the capillaries are very thin, just 1 cell thick, for easy diffusion of materials between the blood and tissue cells. The network of capillaries in the tissue cells is called the capillary bed. The following diagram illustrates the structure of the capillary bed. We're going to look at that diagram. So what they are saying here is that capillaries, 1, they form a link. They form a what? They form a link between arteries and veins. That's number 1. 2, they have got direct contact with the tissue cells. They have direct contact with what? With the tissue cells. So as blood is flowing through the capillaries, substances will be able to be exchanged between the blood in the capillaries and the tissue cells, because the capillaries have got thin walls, which is just 1 cell thick. So there will be that easy penetration or that easy diffusion of substances. Alright, are you understanding? Are you following? So what you need to know about capillaries is that 1, they form a link between arteries and veins, okay? And these arteries, they subdivide until they form capillaries. Now the capillaries have got what? Direct contact with the tissue cells. That's another thing that you need to know. They have direct contact with the tissue cells. This is what makes it possible for substances to be exchanged between the blood, which is in the capillaries, and tissue cells. And then in addition, capillaries have got thin walls for easy diffusion of materials between blood and tissue cells. They may ask you, what are the characteristics of capillaries? I've given you 3. 1, they form a link between arteries and blood vessels. 2, they have got direct contact with the tissue cells. 3, they've got thin walls, just 1 cell thick, for easy diffusion of materials between the blood and the tissue cells. Now, as they have said, the network of capillaries in tissue cells is called the capillary bed. Let's look at the diagram and I'll be able to explain more about what they are saying. So this is the diagram that we have. This here is the capillary. Now, remember, arteries will subdivide, okay? When they say tissue cells, what do they mean? Listen, blood is flowing, right? From the heart. It is going to all parts of the body. Now your whole body, it is made up of cells. Those cells, a group of cells, will form a tissue. For example, skin tissue. Iyi skin yetirinayo ifunika food and oxygen. Aya muscles, muscle tissues yetirinayo afunika food and oxygen. So uku kuma parts enakamba skin, muscles, shani, they are capillaries that are supplying these parts with food and oxygen. So skin tissue, muscle tissues, they receive these things because these blood vessels supply them with these things. What things? Food and oxygen. So if you look at these tissue cells that we have here can belong to any organ. It can be liver, it can be lungs, it can be any organ that you can think of in our body. It can be the pancreas. All those things, they need these food nutrients, this oxygen, which is transported, which is carried by blood, because blood is what carries oxygen. It's what carries food nutrients. It's a transport. It transports these things. So as blood is flowing kuma capillaries, these tissues will be receiving those requirements, food and oxygen, okay, as you can see in this diagram. So these are tissue cells, and like I said, these tissue cells can belong to any organ that you can think of. It can be my lungs, it can be the liver, it can be the kidney, it can be the skin, it can be the muscles. These tissue cells, they can belong to any of those things. What you need to understand is that these tissue cells, they receive oxygen and food nutrients and other substances that can diffuse, okay? That's what you need to know. So this here is a capillary bed. It's a diagram of a capillary bed. So arteries, an example of an artery, let's say aorta, right? The aorta. It transports blood, which is oxygenated from the heart, isn't it, to all parts of the body. So let's say this part of the body are muscles. So meaning these are tissue, these are muscle tissues, right? So as the aorta is coming towards these tissues, it will subdivide into what? Arterioles. It will subdivide into what? Arterioles. Then arterioles will form what? This capillary. In capillary. As you can see, this is a capillary around. It's a capillary. And it is forming a link between these arterioles and these veins. This is a venule. And as this venule is extending going this side, it will again divide into veins. It will form veins, which can be a vena cava in this case, because I am saying that hook ni aorta. Aorta. The aorta is bringing blood, and then it subdivides into what? Arterioles. The arterioles will bring blood in capillary, they'll bring blood here, and then blood will flow in venule, which is going to now go back to it to form another what? It will form a vein which will transport blood back to the heart. So in this case, that vein is the vena cava, because the vena cava transports blood from all parts of the body, taking it back to the heart. So the aorta brings blood, it subdivides into the arteriole, and then blood reaches the capillary. The capillary, since it's a link, it will link the two, and then this is the venule, which is part of the vein. It will form veins which are going to transport blood back to the heart. Are you following? Hope you are following. Hope you are following. There's nothing complicated here. There's nothing complicated here. So arterioles are bringing blood. This blood is oxygenated. This blood contains food. When we talk of food, we don't mean my biscuit. We don't mean machan. We mean nutrients like vitamin A, carbohydrates, proteins. Those vitamins. Those are the ones we're referring to as food. So this blood, as it is coming, it contains those things. It is flowing, it will reach the capillary. This is the capillary, as you can see, capillary. And red blood cells, right? So, as it is flowing, this capillary has got what? Thin walls, making it possible for substances that I've mentioned, food and oxygen, to diffuse from the blood going to the what? Tissue cells. So, pay attention here, my students. Pay attention. Food and oxygen will diffuse from the blood going into the what? Tissue cells. It will diffuse from the blood going into the tissue cells. And then, so meaning oxygen is going out of blood. It is doing what? Going out of the blood. Food is going out of the blood, going to these what? Tissue cells. These tissue cells are receiving food and oxygen from the blood. Once they've received, as blood is flowing going this side now, it no longer contains those things because it has passed them over to the tissue cells. Therefore, we say this blood does not contain oxygen anymore. It does not contain the food anymore. Okay, because those things have been distributed to the tissue cells. Oxygen has been distributed here. So as blood is going back, it no longer contains oxygen. Therefore, it is deoxygenated. Understand? Are you following? It is now what? Deoxygenated. So as blood is going back, it is deoxygenated. So we've got the tissue fluid again on this diagram. We've got the tissue cells, which I've already mentioned. We've got the venule, which later on divides into the vein. Then we've got the lymphatic, we've got the lymphatic vessel. Now, when blood from the arterioles reaches the capillary bed, the plasma is filtered out of the capillaries into the spaces around the tissue cells. Okay, so plasma is found in blood. When we look at blood in our next tutorial video, we're going to learn more about plasma. The fluid around the tissue cells is called tissue fluid. As you can see, this is a tissue fluid. Tissue fluid has the following functions. Number one, bathing the tissue cells. That's what it does, bathing the tissue cells. Number two, thermoregulation of the tissue cells. So thermoregulation, this is the regulation of temperature. Okay, the regulation of temperature. And then the other one is facilitating exchange of materials between the blood and tissue cells. Tissue cells. Dissolved food and oxygen diffuse from the tissue fluid into the tissue cells, while carbon dioxide and urea diffuse from the tissue cells into the tissue fluid. So I want you to follow me here. My own tissue fluid, it simply facilitates the exchange of materials. It controls, it regulates, it facilitates the exchange of materials between blood and the tissue fluid. So dissolved food, food, we don't mean my biscuit, we mean my nutrients like carbon dioxide, carbohydrates. We're talking about proteins, we're talking about vitamins, that's what is referred to as food. So dissolved food and oxygen diffuses from the tissue fluid into the tissue cells. So first of all, this blood is the one which contains dissolved food and oxygen. It will diffuse from blood going into the what? Tissue fluid. And then the tissue fluid now will pass it over to the tissue cells. That's why they're saying that the tissue fluid facilitates the exchange of materials. And then I am a tissue cells. These tissue cells, I am a tissue cells. Carbon dioxide will diffuse from these tissue cells. Carbon dioxide, what else? And urea will diffuse from these tissue cells going into this tissue fluid. And this tissue fluid will pass it over to the blood. And as blood is going this side, it is rich in carbon dioxide and rich in urea. As blood is coming from this side, it is rich in oxygen and food, right? Once blood reaches the capillaries, there's an exchange. The exchange meaning tissue cells passes the carbon dioxide and the urea into the blood. This blood will contain urea and carbon dioxide as it is going back. Are you following? Hope you are following. So if you don't understand, just repeat again, repeat until you get it. So dissolved food and oxygen diffuses from the tissue fluid into the tissue cells, while carbon dioxide and urea diffuses from the tissue cells into the tissue fluid, and then the tissue fluid will pass it over to the blood. And as blood is going back, it contains carbon dioxide and urea. All right. Now, the formation of tissue fluid from blood is caused by the following factors. The formation of this fluid, it is caused by the following factors. The pressure of blood coming from the arteries is higher than the pressure in the venule, because remember the veins, this is a vein, this is an artery. The vein transports blood under low pressure. So this will cause the formation of this fluid, because the pressure of blood coming from the arteries is higher than the pressure in the venule. The walls of the capillaries are very thin, 1 cell thick. Red blood cells are not filtered out of the capillaries because they are large and rigid. However, phagocytes are able to change shape and squeeze out of the capillaries. So phagocytes, you're going to learn about them when we look at blood in tomorrow's video. Yeah. So that's the end. That's the end of this tutorial video. I hope you've enjoyed the tutorial video. Make sure to subscribe to my YouTube channel, the biology channel. Make sure to subscribe and leave a like for this tutorial video. This has been Mr. Philip Kauma, the excellent biology tutor. Stay blessed.